Hi, my name is Sabina, and I will be talking about thermoregulation in forest elephants for the 3.4 homeostasis biology internal.
Homeostasis is the ability for an organism or cell to maintain equilibrium by adjusting physiological processes. When a system is disturbed, built-in regulatory devices respond to these changes and try to balance them. It is the body's attempt to maintain a constant internal environment within tolerance limits. This is important because it helps the body maintain an optimum state of being. One example of homeostasis is thermoregulation, the ability to maintain a relatively constant body temperature despite widely ranging environmental temperatures. It is a balance between heat production and heat loss mechanisms that occur to maintain a constant body temperature. Thermoregulation is important because there are enzymes in the body that require an optimum temperature to be able to function. If this temperature increases too much, the enzymes become denatured. Thus, the enzymes can no longer do their job. If the temperature is too low, then the enzymes work at an extremely low rate as they have little energy to be able to function. Forest elephants are ancestors to the more familiar savanna elephants of East and Southern Africa, but are distinct species with unique DNA. They are the only elephant left on Earth whose population is still mostly intact. Forest elephants are found in the rainforests of the Congo Basin in Central Africa and small, isolated populations in West Africa. This is a much damper, humid environment and extremely hot, and thus forest elephants need a good cooling mechanism to maintain homeostasis. Behavioral thermoregulation can include rolling in mud and pouring water over themselves to cool down the outside of their body. However, to effectively cool down their whole body, physiological thermoregulation must occur. This is the feedback loop for the forest elephant. The stimulus is the hot temperature in the surrounding environment. The detector is the thermoreceptors in the skin that detect the increase in temperature and send signals from all around the body to the processor, the anterior hypothalamus in the brain. This part of the brain deals with detecting increases in temperature. The effector is peripheral vasodilation. The smooth muscle cell walls in blood vessels relax, allowing large quantities of warmed blood from the core of the body to be carried to the skin. In response, hot blood rushes to the surface of the skin, facilitating radiation. Radiation is when heat energy moves from the hot blood to the surface of the skin, and from the surface of the skin to the surrounding cooler air. This is because heat energy will move from a high energy to a low energy. In elephants, this occurs mostly in the ears. They have many blood vessels that allow radiation. The loop then returns to the stimulus. This loop is called negative feedback. Negative feedback is the reaction where the system responds to a change back to the optimum internal environment. Most homeostatic processes have negative feedback. Elephants are endotherms, animals that are able to produce their own internal heat rather than rely on the environment. This means they usually have a constant internal temperature of about 36.5 degrees Celsius. If temperature is cooler, then the processor will be the posterior hypothalamus, and instead of vasodilation, vasoconstriction will occur. This will result in a decrease in blood flow from the core of the body, diverting blood flow from the skin to deeper tissue, and thus reducing heat loss radiated from the skin. If an elephant were to get a virus and become sick, then the body will try fight off the virus by raising the core body temperature, which will prevent most viruses from replicating as they need a specific internal temperature to replicate. This is one of the body's responses to fighting off a virus and is a form of positive feedback. The body does this by producing compounds called prostaglandins. These change the set point of the hypothalamus, which in turn allows the internal temperature to rise in the elephant. This can be dangerous because the external temperature is already high, and increasing the internal body temperature could cause the elephant's enzymes in cells to denature. Denaturation occurs when high temperatures affect the weak hydrogen bonds that make up an active site of an enzyme. This changes the shape of the active site and stops the enzyme from binding to the substrate, thus losing the ability to facilitate reactions. Hypothermia can occur. This is when the body produces or absorbs more heat than it can radiate out. When the body temperature gets too high, the animal can become extremely unwell and eventually will die. Elephant ears are very large and have many blood vessels concentrated there, as it is their main point of heat loss. Their ears are rounder than the more common African bush and Asian elephants, giving them a larger surface area in relation to their body size, which allows more heat loss to occur. Forest elephants are also smaller than the African bush elephant, giving them a closer ratio of body mass to surface area of the skin. This means more body heat can be radiated out through the skin in comparison to the bush elephant. These elephants are adapted this way due to the hot, humid climate they have to endure in the rainforest. In the Congo Basin, where forest elephants are found, there is not a lot of shade or protection from the constant heat due to the basin being at the equator. By having this internal mechanism, less energy needs to be used for behavioral thermoregulation, which includes finding water to pour over their bodies, rolling in mud to cool down, or even finding cool patches of shade, which in a rainforest can be rather ineffective. With physiological thermoregulation, less energy is used and thus more energy is available to be spent on finding food and producing and caring for offspring.